Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here with Tim Girsby, the author of Edit Like You Stole It. Even a moron like me can edit line fiction. Woo! And I have the distinguished pleasure of being here with Tim, who is joining us from.
Well, just outside London, Amersham,
Yeah.
if you must know. It's brilliant. How you doing?
Hello, hello. I'm glad to have you here. And we're
Yeah, it's
going to
lovely to see you.
talk about his debut nonfiction book. However, Tim writes other things, so feel free to fill us in on the other things that you write, Tim.
Sure. No, so I've been writing this book on and off now for about a year and a half. I think I came to you about 9 months ago, I think, and I'd spent a solid 6 to 9 months doing it before that. And the reason I was doing that was because I was writing fiction before that, and my first love is still fiction. I love writing fiction, but I was not very good at it, and I really wanted to get better. And I think because we first met because I sent you my first manuscript, and
Yes.
you were very kind and told me all the things I was getting wrong, and told me to go back and do it a good edit. And so I just thought I was going to up my game, basically. And so yeah, so I've this so what turned from a self-learning project into a side project into a thing that I was chucking about with some internet friends into a sort of manuscript into my first published book. So it's pretty good. It's pretty fun.
Oh yeah, and I had a lot of fun editing it. And the other thing that I love about Edit Like You Stole It is that it's written from the perspective of an author who's
Right,
trying to help other authors.
right,
And it's a little bit different from Constance Hale's, but in the same like vein of
right.
here are the basic concepts you need to know when you're going to line edit your work, in addition to some very helpful developmental things as well that I think are really going to help out folks, especially those who can't really afford to get their own line edit.
Right, right, exactly. Because line editing is really expensive, isn't it? I mean, developmental editing is, I think, that's what you did for me, I think, and I think you
I
line
did.
edited and for sort of, I don't know, 20 pages or something until I ran out. But it was no, you're right, and it's the texture of the work, isn't it? It's what makes the prose just really sing. Now, I think it's really good. It's also, I think, probably the most fun bit of editing. You
It
know,
really is.
yeah, it really is, isn't it? It's like doing a Sudoku puzzle or something. It's just satisfying. It's just sliding things around until they click into place.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about when I get a chance to line edit is really being able to do the fine tuning that any editor and even authors love doing. Like there are authors who love editing, there are
Mm,
authors who hate
mm,
editing,
that's
they're
right.
happy to hand it over to someone else. So where do
Yeah.
you feel like you are on that spectrum?
So I started off being a person who was very fearful of editing, and now I've wholly embraced it. It's a little bit difficult. It's a little bit dangerous. I do think that you have to be a little bit careful when you write because when the first draft just needs to be, you just need to like dump it out onto the page as quickly as you can, you know? And the problem is you can get yourself tied up into knots staring at use of adverbs and thinking, should I be doing this? And of course, that's very stifling to your creativity, you know. And so I think I have to be a little bit careful of that. I'm most happy, I think, when I've finally got that first draft out. And then I'm sort of slowly going back with a cup of tea on a rainy afternoon. You know, it's that's genuinely enjoyable. I think over scrutinizing the edit process and the writing process slows that down. And I am a little bit aware of that with myself. So yeah, it's a complicated relationship. I also, honestly, I feel like a complete fraud, right? I've written a book about editing, despite not being a professional editor, which is obviously why I had to talk to you because you might have just told me, get out of here. But fortunately, you told me what I was doing wrong and spared my blushes before we published. So that was nice. So that also sort of sits in the back of my mind, which means obviously I can't go out saying, look, I know anything about this. I don't know any more about this than you. Well, I know you, obviously, but a casual writer. This is stuff I've learned along the way, through got the scars, through my, critique circle and just general people reading it and telling me I was a moron and just reading blogs and just everything. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, and I love that it's very humorous. Like
I
as
mean,
people read through, there's just like that's something that you're known for as a wonderful human, as also an author. And like I feel like your voice and your humor really shines through in this
I mean,
book.
who wants to slog through a grammar manual, right? You have to be entertained, otherwise you're not going to read this, you know? Like it's not a maths textbook. When it was originally written, I actually set it out like a novel. I didn't use anything at all beyond just, you know, chapters and sections. And it very quickly became apparent that I had to make it a bit more like a textbook. But I pushed really hard on making it anything other than a mass market paperback because otherwise it's just boring. You're going to read it for pleasure, not for business, you know, and then hopefully
Amen.
learn something. Yeah.
Oh, I think so. I think loads of folks are going to learn from it, especially just anything from like a person first starting out. They've done at least 1 to 2, 3 drafts, and they're ready to really get in and make their prose shine, but
Right.
also try to catch any little bits that might be hanging out there, particularly with point of view, which
Yes.
we all know
Yes.
I love to just
Yes.
drill
Yes. Yes. That's
down with folks about point of
that
view.
is your thing. And that was actually the first thing I learned from you was how to do point of view properly, which I was terrible at. And that's really interesting, actually. That's really interesting. I think that's a fascinating topic. You know, this idea that there's all these different cameras and you have to choose the appropriate camera for the appropriate scene, the distance between you and the reader's head and the distance between you and the writer's head, sorry, not the writer's head, the character's head. You know, it is so interesting. It's so interesting. It's so hard and so intuitive when you read it. You don't realize all the artistry behind it. You know, I think that's so interesting.
I agree. I love it when I read a book and I'm not actually thinking about point of view and I have to go back and say, "Oh,
Yes,
what was that in? What was,
that's right.
And
That's
so
right.
I think like also the modern last I'd say 20, 30 years of how we construct point of view is a little bit different.
Oh
If
yeah,
you
definitely.
you look at books 200 years ago, there's head hopping,
That's
there's
right. That's right. That's
and so
right.
that could be confusing for authors because they're like, oh, but this book that's like, we read as kids and da 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 da.
That's right.
And it's like,
That's right.
yes, because it is an older book, it can get
That's
away
right.
with it, but we can't now.
That's right.
So
That's right. That's right. You look at Tolstoy, and he was an absolute master of point of view, and he broke it constantly. And he broke it in the right way. And then everybody else of his generation broke it the wrong way. And if you try and copy him, you will also break it the wrong way because nobody's Tolstoy, which means you're far better off looking at something modern and mass market and getting it right now. I agree completely. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
absolutely. Yeah. And so one question I wanted to ask you went a little bit into the process of drafting and getting ready to publish it, but do you feel like there's
mm.
anything else you'd like to discuss about that process of writing it and then like going to print, especially since this is your first publication?
Yeah, sure. So, what's really interesting about this, as I said, is this went through like two or three sort of strange iterations. The first was basically I just published it and just on a sort of little sort of bloggy site, and a lot of people who were put my way by a friend all read it and then all told me what was wrong with it. And so I sort of got that first bit of quite brutal critique. And that was actually really good for it because it meant I could then have really impassioned arguments about fragments with people on the internet that I didn't know. And of course, that's what the internet is designed for, and looking at pictures of cats. So then you end up with a situation where you've got a lot of text, a lot of ideas, and then I did a second complete draft, and then I took it to you. And so you saw a thing that had already been through a bit of a sort of
Yeah.
a brutal punching. And I'm also really lucky that my wife has an English degree and is an extremely adept writer. And so she was also able to proofread a bunch of stuff as well and was able to tell me what I was getting wrong. And so then, you looked at it and we sort of thrashed out a whole load of the chapters. And I think I
You did.
rewrote three or four actually,
And you
based
resubmitted
on
them
your
to me.
feedback. What's that?
And you resubmitted some of them to me.
That's right. I resubmitted some of them. And then, so we ended up then, I think so. I think that was draft three. And then I did another pass after that, and I cleaned up another couple of little bits and pieces. And now it's copying editing. So we'll end up with draft five, I think. So that seemed to be about right. And I tell you what, one of the things that really helps is going away and leaving it. I didn't believe it, but just letting it sit for a month and doing something completely different, and then coming back works absolute wonders. You know, you open it up and you look at it and you just see stuff that you never saw before. It's really, really good. That's an incredibly powerful technique because you just get so fixated with what you're writing and so immersed in it that you can't look up and see a way. And then you come back and you think, oh, obviously that was stupid. Why did I do that? So yeah, no, I know exactly
It's
what you
so
mean.
true.
Yes,
Especially like if you're at the point where you have either crucial things you need to decide on, or like you were in the last stage of editing.
yes,
Like you were ready to go to layout and make this
that's
thing
right. That's
something
right.
beautiful.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And I used to do the layouting. Turns out I hate layouting. I remember you saying that was a thing that you liked, but I
I love
absolutely
it.
no, it's awful and I hate
Love
it.
it so much.
It's really hard. I think that might be because it was nonfiction, and so there was a whole load of stuff that I was slightly fighting against the
Oh
current of some of the
yeah.
layouts software. Like getting multi-line quotes to look nice was an absolute slog. So that was a pain. But the process of getting an actual finished book in your hands is just magical. When you've gone through all of that, when you've got your PDF and you've sent it off and you've got the sample, it's an incredible feeling.
Oh yeah, it is. Especially I loved the when you got your first one that came in. Do you
That's
want to
right.
talk about that? The first print that came through to you.
Yes, it was wrong. So what I'd done was I obviously the process of submitting your first I don't know what it is, your copy cut, proposed cut. I don't know what the technical term is.
Like I call it title upload when you're uploading all the
Let's go with that.
metadata, the
Let's go with
book
that.
interior, the book exterior.
Obviously, as you know, because you sat and guided me through it, there are about 15 million boxes that you have to type in, tick, drop down, check, uncheck, recheck. And one of those was the page thickness. And I got that wrong. We got the wrong one for what the cover design had been. And so when I got it, the cover was offset by a tiny quantity because the pages were just a tiny different thickness. And of course, I panicked and freaked out. And then when I finished panicking, I then sat down and measured every single thing I could. You know, I went into the PDF with the image and I measured that pixel by pixel. I measured the book and I measured the thing and I figured it out. And I was like, right, I think I may have even sent you a panicked email.
You did. You did.
I did, yes. So that was good and was incredible. I learned a lesson that day, which is learn about how proofs work. And you're right, you have to, you have to get the proof, you have to look at it, and you have to be aware that you could probably end up pulping at least one copy of your book that you love because it's got, I don't know, it's all printed in Comic Sans or something. And that's just the price of the self-publishing journey. You're doing it yourself, nobody else is doing it for you.
Oh, completely. And I know that even in traditional publishers, they'll do it like a
Oh
short
yeah, of
little
course.
run. And sometimes those books are the ones that are just given away for review purposes,
Yeah.
depending on the publishing house. But I've had that with all four of these. Like I found little mistakes and just got, a version printed long before the launch.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I
Yeah.
could go through and just be like, okay, what are all the extra mistakes that we
Yeah,
didn't
exactly.
find? Yeah, which
Yeah,
is great.
exactly.
So you have gone into some of the unexpected things that happen, but were there any other like unexpected joys, surprising pains with a first book coming out?
I mean, look, beyond the whole, as you know, I pressed the wrong button and accidentally made Amazon aware of it about 3 months earlier than I should have. That was a surprise. That was quite nice. I think the most interesting thing is finding out how many other people I know are secretly writers, actually. It's like werewolves. People don't tell you they are that, but turns out they are. That's how werewolves work, right? And so like
Yes.
this was actually real, it was really nice actually finding out, people asking me what I was doing that weekend. I was like, oh, I'm going through the proof of this new book. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. And so that was actually really fun, sort of making some connections with people that I had no idea were doing that and sort of, like getting involved with sort of, writing groups and stuff. So that was fun. I think the other big thing has got to be you you have no idea the process that's involved with this, and it really gives you a huge appreciation for what you then go and read elsewhere, I think. And I think it really makes you feel it has given me a completely different view of just downloading some book on my Kindle and reading it, thinking, oh, I see you've chosen that title heading, have you? Oh, amateur. So that, that I think that has really changed the way that I consume text, actually, the way I consume books. So that was nice, that was nice.
Oh, absolutely. I'm one of those people that has even more respect. Like I had someone actually ask me, they're like, oh, when you read people's work that needs revision, do you look down on them? And I'm
Oh,
like, no,
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 I
no, no,
don't.
no, because they've got
No.
work, they've
Yeah.
achieved the impossible. They've put 70,000 words in order that more or less makes sense. I mean, that's more than most people can do.
Yeah, they
More than I
actually
can do most
finished
days.
the book.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people want to finish books but never do, you
Yeah,
know.
that's
And
right.
that's only, like, as we know, the first part of the process. So I'm
Yeah,
glad you brought
exactly.
that up, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Now, what advice would you give to other authors, especially in the UK, from your experience? Because we discovered a couple of things that were different in the UK over the over working with each other that are different from some other
Oh, yeah.
countries for indie
Yeah,
publishing. So I think it's
that's
good
right.
to kind of discuss some of those things.
Yeah, that's right. So what was it we discovered? So the ISBN stuff does not work the same way over here than it does over there. Nielsen
Mhm.
were really complicated, and it took me a long time, and I'm quite a computery person, to figure out how to actually buy the ISBN. And the pricing is pretty crazy as well. The fact that it costs about the same for, I think, is it 100 as it was for one? And you've just got to
Yeah.
decide what you're going to buy, basically. It's kind of a I think economists talk about yes, scarce resource. So that was interesting. Then what else did we have to deal with?
The
Oh, so,
addresses and like the
yes,
data that
that's right.
Nielsen requires.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I think I ended up putting my own home address in because I decided I probably wasn't that worried about what they were going to do with it because it looked like they were going to just make it where bookshops, I think, were going to get at it. And the thing about the UK is the rules for like sending addresses around, they're pretty tied down. So I don't think anybody's going to do anything with
Much
that.
more
So
than the
probably okay.
US.
But so
Much more than the US.
much more than the US, that's right. But you do have to give out your home address. You do have to give out your name and address so that in theory, a publisher can write a physical letter to you, though I very much doubt any one of them are going to. So there's that as well. And then I think so obviously the company that I'm using, they're actually based in the UK, which I think makes that a little bit easier because I think everything they're priced is in pounds. So I don't have to worry about like I'm not paying them in dollars, which makes my life a bit better. So that was a nice bit nicer as well. But then obviously you then got to worry about the fact that a lot of your readers are American, and so you're going to get a lot of dollar income, and then figuring out how you're going to work that out as well. That's a pretty big deal as well, right? So that I think is pretty complicated.
Yeah, I agree. Because trying to figure out like, okay, what's the equivalent in dollars and rounding it up and
Yeah,
making sure it's like
yeah,
not too expensive. Because your
yeah,
distributor
exactly.
is Ingram.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. That's right.
yeah,
That's right. That's
Ingram,
right.
and Ingram's a huge distributor. Like they're located,
Yes.
just for people who don't know, they're located in the UK, in the US. Like one of their big distribution warehouses is in Tennessee. And I've a couple of times gotten other people's books by accident
Huh.
from
How did
Ingram.
that happen?
I don't think it happens in the UK, but it's happened to me twice in the US. So
What, they
the
accidentally post them to you?
yeah, they just like and there's just a crossing of wires of orders. The robot or the human got something wrong, and I get someone
Okay.
else's books
Oh,
right
well,
before a launch party.
oh dear. So somebody is busy crying, trying to find where their crate has gone. Oh dear me. Okay, well that's a terrible horror story that I've not yet dealt with. So I'll see how
Which
that
I'm
goes.
glad. So that's a
Yes,
difference in the UK. They might be more diligent than in the US.
yes, yes, yes. Okay. And now you've given
Yeah.
me an extra thing to be panicked about. Excellent, thanks.
Sorry. Anytime. I mean, and it could just be like this, it's a rare thing that happens, but it does sometimes happen where,
Mm, mm,
things
mm,
just
mm. But I mean,
go.
shipping is hard. Logistics is difficult. It's a hard thing to get right. It's not an
Oh,
easy.
absolutely. Especially if it's all just like a machine kind of process and there's not like a human doing any sort of oversight of
Well,
it.
and also small shipments of bespoke things. That's often where it goes wrong because you just have to put a sticker on the wrong box and bosh bosh bosh, you sent it to Milwaukee. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So my advice, if anyone comes across that sort of problem, is to directly contact the person whose books it is, if you can suss it out, which I was able to. Little
Yeah,
Brown's books, it's such a big company, I couldn't, I just
yeah,
ended up doing what Ingram told me, which was give them away to my students.
yes.
And then I got asphalt manuals so 10 asphalt manuals instead of the 10 books of Mixed Bag of Tricks. And they were
Uh,
supposed to come in a week before our launch party. So we were 10 books short, which luckily we had a bigger order previously, so it was fine.
oh
So I
my
got to
word.
contact the asphalt manual folks and do an exchange because I knew Ingram would do nothing. I'd already experienced this. And so I'm like, asphalt manual people in Tennessee, can we do a swap? And they're like, sure, that'd be great. Thanks so much. Boom, swap.
Wow. Did you learn a lot about asphalt in the interim time? I mean, it was
Totally how to produce it. So any other advice you can think of to give authors that might be swirling around?
Oh, so the most important thing I think is to get as much feedback as you can, and to really try and like feedback is really difficult because you always ask a question and somebody gives you a different answer, right? That's what happens with feedback. You say, "Do you like my book?" And they say, "Why is it green?" That is the sort of the way that it works. But the most important thing is to try and figure out what they're actually saying, try and figure out, okay, fine, they're talking about the fact they don't like this, I don't know, this section, and maybe, probably, possibly it needs a cut. Maybe this character is just talking too much. Maybe this whole thing needs a condense, trying to figure out the actual intent. And I think that's because the problem is as I said, you get so stuck into it, you can't figure it out. Critique circles are so good for that, although they're a little bit, you have to be very careful with them because, again, you won't necessarily get the answers that you want. And people like to focus on the line edit stuff. They don't like to focus on the big stuff. And that's particularly difficult if you're working on one of these really, really, a really chunky novel, a sort of, 100,000 word fantasy book or whatever. It's almost impossible to find somebody who will do a read for read with you and actually go through that and go the journey with you. Like I had some success with Scribd. I learned quite a lot from Scribd. That was like where I first started off with my fantasy book, and that was really good for the first few chapters. But then it's very difficult to find the same person who read along with you. But still, that feedback is so important, because you're not going to know that you've totally messed up the pacing of the second act, and you have to find somebody who's going to tell you that. So I don't know how you do it, but I do think that's important. I've also found that I write a lot, like a lot. And I write a lot of stuff that I know I'm never going to publish. And I do that because keeps it keeps the wheels going. And it means that when I'm stuck, I'll go and do something else. I write a lot of short stories, a lot of novellas, a lot of little things. And you can just, if you're completely stuck on something and you think it's boring and terrible and you hate yourself, you can just wig out on something totally different to anything that you've written before, end up with something really short, maybe I don't know, publish it on some, one of these little free story sharing sites, and then somebody might read it and you might get a bit of feedback. But the key thing is you've written it. And then when you come back with fresh eyes to the big stuff. And that's really helped me. It does slow your writing down a bit, but I think you end up with a slightly better quality product at the end of it, just because you can, you can believe in yourself at the end. You can keep remembering why it is you write. I do think that. So those are kind of my two writing tips.
Oh, and I
I
think
also
those are
think you end up with a
great.
lot of short stories, which I mean, nobody reads short stories, but still, short stories are great.
Oh yeah, and it's so fulfilling because like you can go from like rough draft to final stage draft so quickly.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so you can do 2 or 3 revisions of a 3,000 word short story in, maybe a long weekend. And that's nice, actually. It's nice to remember what it's like to hold a finished product. And it's nice to remember how it is you can get there, from empty page to rough idea to polished thing to shipped. So yeah, I
Yeah.
really like that. I think it's really good just as a writer, just to do that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think like when you're talking about the like swapping with other people, it does take time to find folks, like you said, that will do full manuscript for full manuscript.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when you can find that person who can be completely objective and not hurtful, because there are a couple folks masquerading as like great feedback critique
Yeah.
partners,
Yeah.
and bless them.
Yes. Yes. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you have to try the tightrope though, don't you? You have to be able to say, look, I don't like this. And you have to be able to say why you don't like it. Otherwise, you're not really giving very good feedback. And it's a difficult thing to do. Learning how to give nice feedback is really hard, actually, you know. And I think the whole shit sandwich thing is a terrible idea, to be clear. I think, just trying to find the positive stuff as well as the negative stuff is often the way to do it, just to kind of soften the blow. Because we always take it personally. It doesn't matter how long we've been doing it. If somebody tells you your use of, adjectives is wrong, you're still going to feel it there in your core. I just whacked the camera. You're still going to be slighted. Everything is terrible and awful, and you just want to give up, you know. So it's really hard to give feedback as well as receive it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think the more that you get feedback, the more that you are accustomed to it and able to kind of break it down into tiers. Like, okay, this is someone who knows me, so their feedback is only going to likely go so far because they know my personality. They like me. They have a, what do you call it, a like an investment in me personally. Whereas, a professional editor who I work with, they have a job to do. They are in
That's
the
right.
industry like I am, and they understand that there's a weight of responsibility to their feedback, and they are very good at being able to say, okay, this is what is going to be expected of you by readers. These
Yeah.
are some things that
Yeah.
are kind of, you could go either way,
Yeah.
and discuss it with you, and then this is my personal opinion as an editor
Mm,
and my reaction as a reader. And
that's
if
right.
there, and that's what you really need to be able to have that from both a critique partner, hopefully, and
Mm,
also from a professional editor. And I know, like, my critique partner, Cara, she's really able to, like, get down to both the brass tacks and, like you said, the big story
mm,
overview,
yeah.
which
Yeah.
is really
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an amazing thing if you can find it. It really is. It's very powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I'm curious, what what are some of the other books that you have in queue for publication?
Well, so I'm going back to the epic fantasy novel that I started with. So I'm actually, it's interesting. I'm re-editing it now based on all the stuff that I've learned. So that's nice actually. That's going to be draft five. Because I don't know, I've actually lost track, but I think when I looked at my badly managed document revision system, I think the number five was there. So I'm about halfway through doing that, and I'm actually really happy with it. I'm really glad I took this time out to do all of this work on editing, because I go back and, again, having spent a lot of time out of it, you look at it and just think, okay, fine, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is good, and therefore this is the point that I'm going to pick it up by, and I'm going to, and it's like a pretty deep rewrite, actually. Like whole chapters I've not quite thrown away and rewritten, but quite a lot. I'm really happy with it. So that is going to be. I'm hoping I'm going to get that out next year. I'm hoping I can get that out next year. Yeah, I know, right? It should be pretty good. So that's going to be really interesting, because having gone through the process of getting this book out, I now have a fairly good idea about how long it takes to do all the rest of it. So hopefully I'm going to get that done. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm not so sure. I've got a couple of ideas in the pipeline. I'm wondering about another nonfiction book, because I've been doing a lot more reading about writing and a lot more thinking about writing, and writing lots of little pieces which I think I could eventually string together. And I've been thinking much more about a sort of macro level rather than a micro level, because I think that's fascinating, and I think it's such an important part of the craft. And people don't write about it as much, actually. There's a lot of writing about the micro, and there's a lot of sort of like literature. People talk about like literature and about the themes and ideas of a book, but there's not so much about the art of writing at scale, about the way that plots hold together. Actually, I mean, that's not true. There is some. I mean, I remember that amazing book that you recommended to me. which I can't remember. The emotional art of storytelling, is that it? I can't remember. That's
Emotional craft of
fantastic.
fiction.
That's right.
This
Yes,
one, I think.
that's right. Exactly. The emotional craft of
Yeah.
fiction. That's fantastic, and I really enjoyed that. But I think there's a really, really wide and interesting field to think about there. So I'm sort of sketching some stuff out for that right now as well. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Maybe
Oh,
I'll be
and I
back
think that's great
time.
because I have a book that sounds like it might have the same macro level focus that I just got at like a little auction with the Society of Children's Writers and Book Illustrators.
Oh wow, that's interesting. I'll pick that up and have a look at that as well. Fantastic,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, my pleasure. That sounds great. Anything else that you're working on that you're even just having fun with?
I mean, like I'm writing a short story every month that I publish on Wattpad with my mates in our stupid zine, and that's fantastic because it gives you a bit of free feedback. Everybody piles in and tells you what you're doing wrong, so that's nice. But no, that's pretty much the edge of it. Yeah, like one book in the works, one novel being edited, a short story every month. That's pretty
That's a
much
lot.
keeping it going. Yeah, that's right. I can't manage any more than that. Oh yes,
No.
plus a bunch of essays that I'm slowly pulling together. Yeah, no, it's a lot. It's a
Oh,
lot. But for the
okay.
non-fiction stuff. But this is the thing. As I said, I've written like 5 or 6 chapters so far of this, so we will see how it goes. But yeah, no, it's a lot. It's a lot. But as I said, I like writing. It keeps me amused. It keeps me going. It's an island of, in a storm of madness, I think.
Absolutely. I love that. Can I quote you on that?
Of course you can.
So if anyone didn't catch that, he said that writing is an island in a storm of madness, which I love. That's
Yes,
fantastic.
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's true. And if you don't
And
enjoy it, there's no point doing it, you know?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that like that kind of brings me to a question about the, and I'll just give you a little preface for the question. And that is that I find that folks get very tied up when they're querying literary agents. And they have kind of various expectations when I'm talking to folks every week during the free calls that I offer. And they'll often, feel very gutted when their book isn't being received the way that they would like. And what advice would you have for folks since you've also queried yourself?
Right. So I guess there's a couple of things to say. The first thing is it is even more competitive than it was, you know, I don't know, a couple of years ago, right? The volume of manuscripts that are going to agents is vast. We know this because they put that on all of their websites. They all say we are receiving more manuscripts than we ever have. So you're competing against a huge number of people, which means that just numerically the odds of being selected are not, they're not brilliant. If we're just going to be brutally honest with ourselves. Now, I queried a bit and then I stopped. I stopped for a couple of reasons. The first was I wasn't getting anything, and in retrospect, I have a sort of fairly good idea why that was. I sort of went through my sample and I sort of started changing it and picking bits out, and I was like, okay, fine, I could go back through this, or I could save myself the pain. But the second thing is, I think these days, like self-publishing, firstly, doesn't have so much of a stigma as it used to, like vanity publishing, where you actually paid for all the books and you put them in your house and then you sort of gave them away to whoever you could. Now with print on demand, people really are getting the books that they want to read. It's an actual viable business strategy, which it wasn't before print on demand and ebooks. But I think the second thing is you have so much more control over it. I'm really happy with the idea that I'm just going to be doing this myself and just going at my own pace and my own speed, and I'm not going to be beholden to a publisher. And I don't know. It's tough. It's a tough old world, I think. But I mean, look, what do I know? What do I know? Maybe if Penguin turned up tomorrow and said, you know what, we want to put you on billboards, maybe I'd just be selling out and it'd just be a cloud of dust where I was, and I don't know. But we'll see. We'll see. I do think though it's important to know that it's gonna be 100 queries before you even get one response, and there's no point getting down about it. You have to go in with that sort of mentality that this is a punt, and if nothing comes of it, well, look, I learned a thing. I do think that's the way to approach it. I just think it's a little bit more better for your mental health than then then everything is going to be amazing and it's going to be great and it's going to be easy. The other thing is, look, there does seem to be times to query as well. If you can go at the right time of year, anecdotally, based on a couple of friends who are published, it's definitely times when agents are looking and when they're not. And so you have to be like, there's a big strategy around it, I think, which again, I just couldn't be asked with. I had a manuscript I wanted to go and it was just, it was terrible, terrible, terrible timing, terrible thinking.
I saw it and it wasn't terrible.
No, it wasn't. It did need some work, and I'm really glad that I took the time out and did put that work in there. So, I'm okay.
Totally. And I feel like it makes the writing much stronger when you go through the process of querying.
Oh, yes, definitely.
It forces you to think about, okay, how would I market this work? What is it really ready for professional eyes?
Right.
What else can I possibly do?
It forces you to think about how you're going to pitch it, because in an ideal world, you've thought of the pitch first, and then you've written the amazing book that fits the pitch afterwards, like it's the sort of the ideal world, because otherwise you end up with a manuscript, you think, oh, how the hell do I pitch this? Which I think is probably what goes through, I definitely what went through my mind, And then the other thing, of course, is that horrible discovery that you need to do comp titles and that you've been in a bunker for 6 months writing, you haven't read anything. And it means then that you're like, okay, great. So part of my job of pitching is reading. I have to be reading a book every month. I have to.
You do.
And I have to keep myself up to date, because otherwise a comp title might just slide past that I've not seen that would be incredibly compelling, that did really well, and that's really, really critical. And that's another thing that I think you don't realize until it's too late. So that was definitely a thing with me, like, and just making sure that I read in my genre is a thing that's been really good for me.
I agree. Like I think it's really, really important to have all of that. Who in your community has been instrumental to helping your books come to life?
Well, okay, so firstly, my wife, who is busy shuttling around downstairs dealing with various minor household crises right now, I'm going to go and help her with, because as I said, she's incredibly talented writer. She's a much better writer than I am, and so it's just really good learning at her knee. And then the second was, I have a friend, Lena Hansen, and she is a published author, and she was really, really good at the very, very start of it. And she was the one she has a little audience, and she sort of sent some of them my way, and they were the ones who they were all like me at my sort of writing level and really kind of bounced around. And so now they've got a sort of a group of people who have really kind of battle tested it. So no, she was great. And she's in my critique circle, which is why I know her, and so yeah, she was fantastic. So big shout out to her.
Excellent. Yeah, because I feel like you got to have a community of folks, just even if it's just a few people to help support your work,
Yeah, that's right. And it's people, I think this is one of the things that you start off with as a writer, sort of, assuming that you can't show your work to anyone because they'll steal it. And it's like, no, writing is a community game. It is not it is a team sport. It is not a lone sport. The sooner you get out of that, the better.
Oh, absolutely. Like every author that I work with, they all will be like, oh my gosh, it's so great to not be doing this alone anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, that's the reason why I don't just have them work with me. I have them meet other writers as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you need to be able to have someone, at least one good friend who is in the same boat as you are, trying to balance the day job, family, and your writing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because everybody's got that.
I'm lucky. I commute for 2 hours every day on the train. So that's my writing time. That's my get the laptop out and, and type furiously. It's that way I can reserve that time because it's not being used for anything else. So yeah, but you're right.
I miss being able to go on a train and have that time for writing or reading.
I know. It's kind of, I mean, it's you say that, but I spent, an extra 20 minutes fretting that I was going to miss my first meeting this morning because the trains were all delayed. So I mean,
Okay, yeah, okay. Good point.
Because you lived, yeah, sorry, go on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Because you lived in London for a while, didn't you?
I would go from Germany to London frequently. So
That's right. Yes,
I'd
yes,
spend summers there. Yeah.
yes.
So I have,
Yes, you've got London Underground, rose tinted glasses.
yes, I
Yeah,
do, unfortunately. But I grew up in Japan, and then I also lived in New York City for 9 years.
that's right.
So,
That's right.
I've
Yes,
got lots
yes,
of public
yes.
transportation,
Yes.
you
Yeah,
know,
I grew up in Japan. Yeah, proper transport. Anyway, you know what? We're not here to talk about public transport. This is not a
you
public
know,
transport blog.
precisely.
Yes, go on.
So I noticed that readers can buy your books here in the US, Barnes and Noble, Amazon,
Hmm.
any bookseller, readers can request in the US your book. All they
Yes,
need to do is just say the title, edit like you
that's
stole
right.
it, Tim Girsby.
That's
However,
right.
elsewhere, where do you want readers to buy your book?
Oh, blimey. I'm not quite sure I'm that far down the road. I mean, right now, obviously, you get it from Amazon. I think I don't know. I think in the UK, you can actually order it through physical bookshops as well, can't you? Because I think Nielsen will do that, which means I don't think I'm going to be stocked in physical bookshops, but I think if you went into a Waterstones, you can give them a title and they'll be able to look it up in their on their computer and they will be able
I'm
to
going to
download
look it
it.
up right now
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
I think it's available in foils. I already
Yeah, that
checked
might
that
make
earlier.
sense. That might make sense.
Yeah.
Yes,
So I would say foils, Waterstones, your local bookshop, ask and
that's right.
request.
That's right.
Edit like you stole it.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So it's really exciting. It's really
Yes, I
exciting.
agree. And thank you so much for coming. Do you have any final things you want to say to readers, to writers before we close?
Um, the only thing is just keep hammering at it, just keep going. Like I started off and I was terrible, and you grow, and that's the whole point. That's the journey. And even if you end up throwing away your first novel like I did, like my first novel, which you've never seen, which was terrible, like it's fine because at the end of it you've got a whole load of battle scars, which then when you put your fingers to the keyboard of the next one will produce something amazing. Like it's if you can possibly find a way of circulating your terrible first drafts that people will have a look at and tell you what you've done gently, then it's just amazing. It really is amazing. And so yeah, it's just keep going, do it because you love it, and then eventually you'll produce something that you're really proud of that you think is ready to actually take to the big time. I think that's it. I think that's the only thing that is. I think it's 95% perspiration like anything else. And I
Amen.
think
Amen.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Do you want to hold up your book so we can
Oh
see
yes, 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 yes. Here we go.
these,
There we go. Look at
please?
that. So there we go.
Yeah.
Woo!
All
Look at
right.
that.
Get your
That was-
copy at
That's
any
right.
great bookshop. Of course, you can
That's
still get it
right.
on Amazon too.
Even the
And
terrible
thank you
ones.
for
Yes.
joining us.
Thank you very much, Neve, for having me.
Thanks.
Cheers. I'll see you later. Bye.